One of Disney's first princesses is an animal-loving, wait-for-prince in shining armor damsel in distress. Katniss, on the other hand, emerges on the scene as a girl who is not only a skilled archer, but is adept at hunting with snares, evidently a seasoned huntress. There seems to be a mistaken assumption that just because a girl like her, who is great at archery and putting an arrow through the eyes or heads of animals, that she must be a cold-blooded killer who will not hesitate to do the same to people in the arena. This assumption was made by Gale and is easily one which anyone can make. However, through Katniss's narration, readers are made aware of her internal conflict with the thought of having to kill another person. When she ultimately puts an arrow through a boy from District 1, which she does on impulse upon seeing him piercing a spear through Rue, she could not stop thinking about it and realizes that it was the guilt of killing a person, though she justifies it as revenge for Rue. The second time she puts an arrow through another person was Cato in order to put him out of the violent and torturous, slow death the game makers had designed. By taking up the role of the hunter, Katniss subverts the image of innocence and demureness associated with conventional girlhood and femininity. Oliver explains that hunting is associated with masculinity because it is a way of providing for the family and because it is a blood sport that confirms man's position at the top of the chain. Katniss is a far more adroit hunter and gatherer than Peeta. She also fends off the mutations and saves Peeta from Cato. She outsmarts the game makers using the deadly berries they collect and in an attempt to give the Hunger Games no winner at all. Her resourcefulness and ability to quickly adapt can be interpreted as a performance of masculinity within the story world, which typically positions men as leaders at home. When they emerge from the Hunger Games, Haymitch warns Katniss that the game makers are upset that Katniss had indirectly rebelled against the government. By changing the rules of the games almost at her own terms, the Hunger Games fail to become the most effective tool in the control of the residents of all 12 districts. Since the beginning, Haymitch, along with Cinna's design of her dresses, had forced Katniss into the role of the desirable love interest, albeit one who just happens to be a skilled huntress. At first, Katniss perceived this image as someone's love interest as a label of weakness. To be desired as a romantic partner seemed to her like a disadvantage when she's about to be thrusted into the arena to fight off other tributes. This association with romance, love, and emotions seemed unnecessary in a world where she must fight hard to survive. This self-perception indirectly juxtaposes romantic love against the maternal instinct which Katniss has for Primrose and Rue. However, when she slowly learns that playing this role of the love interest and being star-crossed lovers with Peeta is to her advantage, and she avoids having to kill Peeta, she thinks of various ways to ensure that she performs the role well for the screen. Though unscripted, her guesses of what the audience of the Capitol will enjoy motivates her to play along with Peeta's lover boy persona. The performance of the girl in love is a performance of girlhood, manifesting ideal images such as innocence, romance, and desirability. She was always doubtful of Peeta, wondering if his lover boy image was also manufactured. Even in the final moment when Peeta draws his knife to throw away, she instinctively raises her bow and arrow and aims at his heart. This scene was not included in the film. It attracts the question of whether the filmmaker was uncertain about portraying Katniss as she was originally written. That is, a girl who is unmoved by Peeta's grand love. Does it take away from the dynamic of the two to show Katniss's moment of vulnerability and overpowering survival instincts? Katniss had been thrown into the role of a protector and provider in her family, which Hanthorne describes as the man of the family, as she picks up performance of masculinity primarily through hunting. However, this performance is carefully reined in when she's in the arena and when Haymitch had warned her to put up a convincing act of the girl madly in love, thus performing femininity for the cameras during the final victor's interview. This becomes extremely crucial as failure to properly fool the audience in the capital would mean a disastrous end for herself, Peta, and also her own family. She performs her femininity, portraying herself as innocent and helpless by clutching onto Peta, leaning against him, or even burying her face into his shoulder during the interview. The tough huntress who appears fearless and adept with deadly archery skills in the arena completely vanishes when she is dressed in the flowy yellow dress, made up to radiate a soft rosy glow, and sits in front of the camera. She adapts well, not only when she was left to starve to death with her sister, but also when she is cornered by the threat of death or punishment in the Hunger Games. The interviews and victory tour being inseparable parts of the game. The image of the skilled archer, the gesture of rebellion against a totalitarian government, of the three-finger salute, and the symbol of the mockingjay, the goddess of democracy, permeated the collective minds of people in various parts of the world, and manifested itself through the adoption of these motifs as symbols of protests across the Asian region. In Hong Kong, Thailand, and Myanmar, democracy protests have seen the use and also the ban of the three-finger salute, a symbol of resistance, of defiance, of a fight for democracy. The three-finger salute is described in the novel as an old and rarely used gesture of District 12, which signifies admiration, thanks, and farewell to a loved one. In the sequel, this same gesture transformed into one of defiance and resistance, just as it has across Southeast Asia. The archer who fights can also be seen in student protests in Hong Kong, combative and strategic in its fight against the police of forces that become increasingly militarized in their attempts to quell the protests or clear out spaces. Perhaps more fascinating to the media and a sizable netizen is the female representatives of these protests. Agnes Chow of Hong Kong student protests, Miss Grand Myanmar, and the Miss Universe representing Myanmar are instances in which the media as well as netizens manufactures an image of the goddess of democracy. Agnes Chow was dubbed by the Japanese media as Hong Kong's goddess of democracy, and as fans from Japan who often comments on her YouTube videos and Instagram posts. Many find her to be cute and pretty, but also brave in her fight for democracy and freedom in Hong Kong. The fascination which the media appears to have is also bolstered by the attention she gets from people from various cultural backgrounds due to her ability to speak fluently in Japanese and English. This positions her as the de facto foreign media representative for the pro-democracy party Demosisto. When she talks about her hobbies and proclaims herself as an otaku, she appears to the audience as a girl who enjoys anime and Japanese popular culture. It is, however, precisely through this image of her as the endearing girl next door otaku with a gentle voice who is wise and politically active, defending democracy and freedom, which makes her a fascinating subject for creating media buzz. In contrast to the goddess-like image which the Japanese media forges for Agnes Chow, the Kong girls, a derogatory term used to describe Hong Kong young women as materialistic, obsessed with luxurious brand names, and typically has quote unquote princess syndrome. What it means is that it describes one who has a fiery temper, bad attitude, and is foul mouthed. This negative connotation of the word Kong girls, short for Hong Kong girl, which was originally a neutral word, underwent a slight transformation during the student protests in Hong Kong. In many ways, it appeared to be, at least at that time, a process of reclaiming the word Kong girls as a positive label, one which represents young women who want to dress nicely and wear makeup even if it's under their gas masks. In another image, a young girl, with nothing but a water bottle in her hand, stands before a group of heavily armed policemen whose riot shield towers over her like a wall, and a tweet writes, "This is what a Kong girl looks like, powerful." The reclamation of the word thus allows a reimagining of the label as one which represents a willingness to fight for democracy, even in the face of fearsome authoritarian government. Whether it is a girl who has yet to hit puberty or the young women armed with gas masks, umbrellas, and bow and arrow, it is difficult not to see the mockingjay in other young people in Hong Kong, Thailand, and Myanmar as they fight for democracy against the military junta or the heavily militarized police force in burning cities. That is not unlike the dystopian world we see in the Hunger Games. Conversely, though Demosisto and Chow's fans depict her as Hong Kong's very own Katniss and Mulan, she is not expected to wield weapons literally and fight on the battlegrounds, where violent scenes had broken out between student protesters and police officers. Chow, as a political representative, is a beacon of hope, someone whose lovable looks and demeanor is intended to propel the political message her party intends to convey. Femininity through Chow is depicted as 1. Girl hero, goddess of democracy; 2. A coy and deceiving girl who uses her femininity to earn pity; and 3. A linguistic genius who is the mouthpiece of the political party, and this is bolstered by her girl next door lovable character. If femininity is traditionally conceived and depicted as weak and vulnerable, as Katniss must perform when she exits the arena, the portrayal of its utter subversion becomes spectacular and dramatic when the circumstances allow it. Yet as Katniss is made to perform her madly in love girl persona, it seems preferable for the girl hero to take secondary status, and it must not replace vulnerability, dependence, or cuteness, which are all hegemonic ideals of femininity. However, this can also be seen as transformative. That is, it is the ability to turn vulnerability and dependence into resources of protection and defiance. Performing to the hegemonic ideal of the female gender, i.e., hegemonic femininity, encapsulated in characteristics embodied by Katniss and Agnes' public persona, they engage with the audience and retain spectatorial gaze. As darlings of the media, they create media buzz precisely because they demonstrate certain sets of widely accepted expectations. Agnes's cuteness juxtaposed against her girl hero image creates the duality which is both intriguing but also attractive to a wider audience. Much like Katniss's adaptability, the modes which she switches seamlessly between when appearing as dressed to the nines girl versus girl hero huntress, Agnes also switches between cute girl next door and linguistic genius democratic politician slash goddess. They both portray one mode that is much more easily imaginable as someone the audience might know in their lives versus the larger than life, almost mythical symbol of democracy and resistance. Likewise, the image of beauty queens wielding weapons to fight for democracy creates a similar effect which maximizes the effect of duality. In another way, the embodiment of immense strength, defiance, resistance against insurmountable forces in the female figure captures the fascination of many. Exceedingly as beauty queens and thus supposedly epitome of femininity, their manifestation of strength as opposed to gentleness or weakness seems to further amplify an effect. While some scholars propound the idea that Katniss' certain sets of characteristics as performing masculinity, I argue that it is the infusion of masculinity and femininity which blurs this artificial distinction that creates the impact that in turn translates into media buzz. Extending from the fictional resistance of YA novel Girl Hero, Katniss, and the Mockingjay, the mediated dramatization and symbolization of the goddess of democracy creates an effect which calls attention to these cute and pretty young women, although in a way it is counterproductive, for it is precisely the ability to draw attention by virtue of their seamless performance of both beauty and bravery, which concomitantly criticizes performers of femininity who are only able to perform one part of the equation but not both. The paradoxical concept of Katniss drawing from femininity as one of the strongest resources for protection against consequences of rebelling in the Hunger Games seemed almost counterintuitive, but this is perhaps one of the most crucial aspects. Likewise, the real-life figures who find resources from their femininity to attract media attention, to convey their political message, equally draw from the same well of strength. Thank you.